News starts right now.
And we begin here with breaking news at 11 o'clock on the death of infamous Boston gangster James Whitey Bulger, found dead in prison this morning. Sources even telling the ABC station out of Boston that Bulger was killed.
The 89-year-old was once one of America's most wanted fugitives. He had just been transferred to a prison in West Virginia. Bulger was sentenced to life back in 2013, convicted of a litany of crimes, including participating in 11 murders.
Also developing now,
Bulger was serving a life sentence after he was convicted in 2013 for multiple charges, including 11 murders, extortion, federal racketeering. For decades, Whitey fascinated so many people. Books, movies made about him. Most recently, Johnny Depp portrayed him in Black Mass. Here's that.
In the beginning, Jim was a small-town player. He's a very smart, disciplined man. Take your shot, but make it your best. Because I get up, I eat you. And the next thing you know, he's a damn kingpin. You know why? Because the FBI let it happen. Bulger's playing this. Make a fool of the Bureau. We're in too deep. And he knows it. God help us.
How come no one has nailed Whitey Bulger? He seems to be involved in every crime in the city, and yet the Bureau keeps saying he's clean.
Well, what's Bulger done?
What's he done? Everything.
Correspondent Deborah Farrick has more on the notorious Whitey Bulger.
He grew up on the mean streets of Boston, and by the time he was a man, everyone in South Boston, or Southie, knew what he'd become. 3 words that describe Whitey Bulger.
Stone cold killer.
James Bulger, an Irish mobster, so feared, so ruthless. Some relatives of the 19 people he's accused of killing decades ago still harbor a vivid hatred of the man known to everyone as Whitey.
I think he's the lowest of the low. He's a mass murderer, like I said before. He's destroyed hundreds of families.
For more than 2 decades, from the 70s to the early 90s, nothing happened in Boston's criminal underworld without Bulger getting a piece of it. He's accused of shaking down gamblers, loan sharks, drug traffickers, as well as legitimate businessmen. John Shea, nicknamed Red, ran his drug operations.
That guy, he wanted to be as strong and as powerful and as rich as he could be. He made tough guys shake.
There was something else about Bulger, something that made him even more lethal. He'd cut a deal with another Southie from the same projects, John Connolly, an FBI agent who recruited him as an informant. Their deadly alliance would ultimately tarnish generations of federal agents.
1976, Connolly tipped him off about a rival in Revere, and Bulger killed him. So Connolly had to realize right away how serious and deadly this arrangement was.
Bulger was supposed to be ratting out the Italian mafia, but he used his FBI contacts to gain information that he allegedly used to kill 19 mob rivals, possible informants, and others.
He would personally get involved in cutting off the fingers or hands of the victims and extracting their teeth.
Shea, now an author and construction worker, spent 12 years in prison rather than rat out Bulger.
I idolized Whitey. I idolized him. And they wanted Whitey through me when I got indicted. And I wouldn't give him up. They could have threatened me with the electric chair, and I wouldn't have gave him up. Ever.
In late 1994, Bulger got one of his final tips from his FBI pal that he was about to be arrested and indicted. He'd planned ahead and took off ultimately with girlfriend Catherine Grieg. After a 16-year manhunt, the FBI finally found the couple living in Santa Monica with dozens of guns and more than $800,000 in cash stuffed in the walls of his apartment. Deborah Farrick, CNN, Boston.
And joining me now by phone, a man you just heard saying he idolized Whitey Bulger, John Red Shea. He was a top enforcer for Whitey Bulger, spent 12 years in prison, also author of the book Rat Bastards, The Life and Times of South Boston's Most Honorable Irish Mobster. Red, thanks for being with us. Red, your reaction to the death of Whitey Bulger?
It's a very strange day, to say the least. I guess, you know, from what I'm hearing and you guys are hearing from reports that he was murdered. If that's the case, I'm not sure he could have been murdered for him being an informant, or just his status alone, being who he was as a Irish mobster legend, you know, and somebody wanted to make a notch for themselves and a name.
You said it after Whitey Bulger was convicted. I'm quoting you here saying they better not let him out, basically with general population, with the rest of the inmates. You said he wouldn't last an hour. They better guard him the rest of his life. You had a feeling.
Yeah, well, I knew that from my experience being in prison for so long myself. You know, there are a lot of people who go to prison that are informants, but they don't have the status he had, A. And B, there are people who are informants, on the other hand, that if they're caught or known by a guy who took his lumps and bumps, he's not going to like that, and he's not going to live with that. So, unfortunately, this is what happens to people who decide to get on that road.
But though we just heard you say at one point you idolized him. Why?
That's correct. I did when I was a young man because, you know, I didn't know that he was an informant at the time. So, you know, I idolized a guy who was romanced and looked upon as a strong figure that wielded a lot of power in the neighborhood, especially coming from the environment that I came from. And, you know, growing up in the projects, a project kid like me was looking at him to seeing how well he was doing in his life, and you know, he wanted to do the same. Young men can be very influenced at times.
Yeah, influence. That's a good word for it. Well, so that's that side of it. A guy you viewed, at least as a young man, as strong, powerful. Let's go to the other side. What's one thing you remember that Whitey Bulger did that you'll never forget?
Well, I remember. Let's get a good thing in there. One good thing was, you know, one time that he didn't like the way my hair looked, and I had a little tail in the back of my hair, and he said, "You're such a clean-cut kid. Why don't you cut that off and keep yourself clean-cut looking?" That was one good thing. And, you know, some other bad things was, you know, if somebody owed him money, you know, he'd walk over and you'd give him a good slap in the mouth, and he'd say, you know, "Next time you'll pay me on time."
You were a top enforcer. What did that entail? What did you do on his behalf?
I ran the drug organization for him. I made sure that everything went properly in that that entity. Sorry.
As far as enforcing, did you ever have to shake somebody down for some cash, things like that?
You know, it all comes with the territory back then, you know?
Yeah. Does it bring it back, a day like this, and a death of a guy who is so influential?
It does. A lot of memories come back, and especially me finding out so rapidly, you know, you know, just so quickly it came about, you know. I was, you know, it's unexpected, obviously.
How do you reconcile that, Red? You know, I mean, I know you served 12 years, and as the memories come back, what goes through your mind?
In some ways, you know, as I talk about in Rat Bastards, how I had this occurring dream and meeting him in New York, how crazy that was, and actually snapping his neck in the dream. But today I feel a little different than that. Today, because I maybe let things subside in my life, I just feel, you know, it's just an end to a thing that was no good.
Well, it's been fascinating to talk to you. John Red Shea.
Thank you very much, Mike.
Yeah, again, reacting to the death.
Thank you. You have a great day.
Yeah, you as well. Reacting to the death of Whitey Bulger. We'll have more on the death of this notorious mobster throughout the show here. I want to get you some other news now, though.